Tammy Bard, and she is the one we mentioned in an earlier podcast that had been listening to our podcast, and she said that it had helped her. Here's Tammy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Tammy, as you mentioned, and I used to live in Los Angeles, but now I'm here in Texas with not a lot of details just yet. Kathy has been helping me in Texas. And so while I was back in California for the last year, I was very sad. And I found, and I happened to Google, I knew Kathy had the website. And what I didn't know that she had was that she was doing a podcast. And so I started listening to them, and I started way back, like 2 years ago, like, you know, when she had an insurance issue, the check issue. That was like 2 years ago. I remember you coming back onto the air and the progression and how much better you are now. Mm-hmm. The sound of your voice is quite different.
That's very good to hear, by the way. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so just hearing Kathy's voice while I was in California, I wasn't happy in California. Mm-hmm. I was going through something pretty stressful. And so what was very soothing was just listening to Kathy's voice. She has to me, I would hear her almost speaking directly to me, all the advice that she was giving on these podcasts. So, I got it for free. I owe her a lot of money.
Way to go, Kathy.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
But isn't that cool when people...
Oh, that's what this is for. If I'm helping one person, I'm happy. That's so good to hear. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, I believe that you have an idea for a topic today.
Well, I have a couple of ideas. I know I threw that dastardly one out when we were off the air.
And we should do that one.
Really?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay.
Oh, we go for the deep stuff.
So, I'm very concerned about child human trafficking. And I saw the movie Sound of Freedom. Mm-hmm. And really...
But you were concerned about it before.
I was. I always... because I'm very... once everybody turns 18, you're an adult. Mm-hmm. And so really, most of the trouble that you cause in your life is usually self-inflicted. But anybody under 18, I have, a little more sympathy for, and empathy.
Yeah.
So, but seeing the movie, and I knew that, I've watched a lot of documentaries that are, made outside of the United States on child trafficking in India, in the Far East, Philippines, all over the world. And then I saw The Sound of Freedom, and I just couldn't believe the numbers that these guys were looking at. Of course, the gentleman who played the part of the Homeland Security FBI guy. The amount of children crossing the U.S. border from Mexico is unbelievable, and I think that should be we should be talking about that to our neighbors. Do you have a brother that's weird that you think's a pedophile? Turn him in, because it's $1 billion business in the United States. That means that somebody's not turning these people in.
There's absolute demand, and I think you're absolutely right that this is not, as much as you want to try and hide it, you've got people that are in your family that someone's got to know.
They don't just start acting weird by buying a child at the U.S.-Mexican border, like one day. I think before that, there's always signs. People say afterwards, I knew that there was something with my brother, but, never pursued it, because you don't want to... And I think there's two things. As a family member, you're completely in disbelief of what you're seeing, and you don't want to believe that you're a part of that type of family. And then the other side is that they'll protect until the worst case scenario happens. These guys are pretty sly, so I'd imagine that even though they do have weird characteristics, they're covering them up. And most families wouldn't find out until they get arrested or,
well, and,
they're on Dateline.
that's a huge swing and a miss if you're wrong too.
Yeah.
If you try and turn someone in and you end up being wrong.
And I don't know if it's turning them in as much as it is being like,
Keeping an eye.
yeah, watching what they're doing, seeing if they're doing straight. You know, you always hear about the kid that, you know, kills the squirrels and kills the neighborhood cats and stuff. And then he ends up, you know, being a serial killer. So that's kind of common knowledge about that situation. I mean, I have 2 children, and if I saw them, you know, skinning squirrels or cats, I would have a talk with them, a serious conversation.
And there's also, we just did an episode about fear, and
The fear of being found out.
the fear of being found out is huge, and it should be.
Well, you try to hide, like you said, they were sly. They know to hide what they're doing. So, therefore, it presents the question.
But I think the people that know, you know, your family members best. You just know when somebody's off and they do something weird. I just can't imagine that with $1 billion business that there's that much demand that I mean, even if we just trimmed the fat by 10%.
Yeah, maybe there are some people that can stay in the closet and no one knows, but that does not represent.
No, $1 billion business. I think there's some guys we could probably, you know, there's some low hanging fruit, so to speak.
Yeah, the demand is entirely way too high. And that's abuse to kids. How do we as a society allow something like that to be that big?
And it's something that, I hate to use the word normal because no one's normal, but the majority of the population just can't get it. It's not that they don't get it. You can't. My focus group of 1, I can't grasp how someone could be on either side of that transaction, either the trafficker or the person that is taking advantage of the situation. And I can't even imagine, not that I really am empathetic to either side. I just can't wrap my arms around the fact that it happens.
Well, yeah, and then to find out from the Sound of Freedom that it happens so much, and that it is as big as it is.
And you just did something that I hope people understand. I don't necessarily. This was a problem before Sound of Freedom, and Sound of Freedom is a great example of how something can kind of fly under the radar, and then it takes one movie, one person, to let that secret out.
Yes,
and all of a sudden, a lot of people that were not exposed to the fact, because we live in Allen, or I live in Allen. My studio's here in Allen, and I've known for years that Allen is a huge transfer point for all sorts of trafficking.
Really?
Including human trafficking. Because...
Can we say where?
You go ahead, yeah.
Our Allen Outlet Mall.
Now,
parking lot.
Oh, because
have we had this conversation?
It's a landmark.
Had that conversation?
Easy landmark.
Yes.
Right near the freeway.
It's right by the freeway. And that freeway goes all the way north. And the traffic's coming in from the south. So, yeah. And it's happens.
Like that last stop before they get to Oklahoma. And all the way up north, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a problem that has been around.
And it's grown.
But
it's obviously grown over the years.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes like a movie like Sound of Freedom, or just to kind of get the word out that you may live in a bubble, but you don't live in a bubble.
Yeah, it's a serious problem. I happen to have known a person that took their children. The family was divorced, and they took their two little girls I'll never forget this story when he told me. And he wanted them for his birthday, and he had them at the carnival park. He was getting food or something, turned around, and they were gone. Never found.
And that's in America.
That was in Texas. Well, I think it was. It was in America, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People think
it happens all the time.
Yeah, people think it doesn't happen here,
it just tears my heart out when I'm out shopping or something, and I see parents that aren't watching their little 4 to 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that they're running free everywhere because I don't know why, but maybe it's one of my past lives, but they can just be snatched like that. They're gone.
They can be tricked.
Yes.
I mean, grown adults can be tricked.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I'm from Canada originally, and this is a story that you just made me think of when I was in my early 20s, and this is a little city, Ottawa. It's not a huge town. It is the capital of Canada, and we have a mall in the west end of town. It was called Bayshore Mall, and one day there was an alert that came across. This is in the maybe 1991 or 1992. And an announcement came across the broadcast that a child went missing, and they were checking everybody going out of the mall. I happened to be there that day. They eventually found the child in one of the bathrooms, public bathrooms, and already I think it was a girl, her hair had been shaved or cut. That's how fast that person had worked, but they had got spooked and left the mall, left the kid behind. It that still gives me that is so that's a predatory action that person did. I mean, that was back in. I mean, this is Ottawa, Canada.
Yeah.
So yeah, everywhere. Some of these guys are very, very slick, and kids are very easily manipulated.
And so, we need to talk about some ways that we stop this. How do we stop this?
Well, at first you don't ignore it.
Good point.
Or try and pretend that we're above it and it doesn't happen in my neighborhood, or that no one I know could possibly do that. And I think that's a natural thought.
But sometimes they live right next door to you.
Well, they live, you know what? They live right next door to someone. Mm-hmm. All of them live right next door to someone.
Right, and I'm not sure, it is, calling the police, because I don't call on that. Let's not get crazy with resources. But I just think there's a way of keeping an eye on these weird people. When they see something strange, a kid showing up at 10 at night, Dateline, they had, do you remember Dateline?
To Catch a Predator?
Yeah, and that is 20 years ago.
Yes.
And they could run that story every week for 2 years because they could get another pedophile who was getting a kid online.
Let me tell you what, on YouTube, now I watch YouTube all the time, and there are dozens of just citizens that do the Catch the Predator videos.
Yeah, yep.
Where they set guys up. And it is just amazing. To me, it's a huge, and I'm not going to lie, I'm entertained. There's a better word than entertained here. Kathy, help me here. I'm enthralled. I'm interested.
You're
I'm
interested. Yes.
At the mind
You're figuring
of these people
out.
that are setting up the meetings. That are these people that are willing to give up their entire lives.
Yes.
To meet a 13-year-old at a Walmart. And to watch their reaction when they get caught. And all of them, with the exception of a very, very small few, they all say this is the first time
they've ever done it. Mm-hmm.
They all say, I wasn't going to follow through. Well, sir, you just drove 2 hours to a Walmart to meet
a minor,
and you weren't going to follow through?
At night.
You pretty much followed through. So it's very hard to believe they all, well, they're married and they have to call their wives to tell them.
It's got to be rough.
How, yeah, it is rough. And it makes me think that these YouTube channels exist, just like y'all are saying. The problem out there is much bigger than even people who recognize a problem think. Because, as you just said, you could have these videos, they're out there. I mean, every day they're catching people. And these are how many people go uncaught?
Oh, yeah, way too many.
Well, and, this is just another thing that, happened recently in the last couple of years. And it makes me think that they're not keeping these guys in prison long enough. There's a boy at the time. His name was Kyle Rittenhouse.
Oh, yeah.
And he shot a pedophile who was coming after him, who was chasing him, and of course the media made something different of it. But, if you just look at the pedophile, he was the first guy, Joseph Rosenbaum. He had a record, years of pedophilia, boys under 12 years old, but they had released him in Illinois. No, in the other state.
Indiana?
Where were they? Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In Wisconsin. So he was released early and went down to those riots and chased a minor, which was Kyle Rittenhouse, which the media never mentions. There would have been, had he been truly Rosenbaum when he was released, there would have been, he would have had a restraining order that he's not allowed to be within 100 yards or something of a minor. And here he is chasing Kyle Rittenhouse. And Kyle ends up killing him, which is, there's one off of the planet. But my thought, though, is what is he doing out of prison? What is Joseph Rosenbaum doing out of prison when he's got a record of at least 5 assaults on boys under 12?
And the self-control I'm showing right now, Kathy,
yes,
is amazing. Because that case, the whole Rittenhouse case, was covered by the media so ridiculously. He's the one that was the evil guy, and he's the one that shot. Mm-hmm. It was completely twisted, the way that whole thing was covered, and it really pissed me off.
Well, as it should. We need more people getting pissed off and standing up. Or we're just going to keep getting buried under the stuff.
And I say it's all at the local level. We don't have to run out and do a protest over at the outlet mall. But I think your neighbor, your brother, your husband, your wife. We all know somebody that's doing something a little bit squirrely, right, Kathy? We know somebody who's doing squirrely things, and the only way is to either block them out or, keep an eye on them.
Now, another issue on it, though, is as I'm watching these YouTube videos, I never feel sorry, obviously, for the predator, but I will admit that a lot of times I don't think the predator is evil. I think the predator is screwed up. Is very screwed up. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder if there's anything we can do, and I hate to sound all liberal, but to help these people before they get to that point. To make sure they don't get to the point where they're acting upon
their desires. Well, it's like she said, that can only happen with education of the parents and schools and everything that's around these kids, and notice, hey, he's having fun killing that cat.
Mm-hmm. Be a good question for Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
Because he has, been a psychologist had a clinical practice for many, many years, and he has definitely heard everything, and I would love to, and he's so good at what he does, I would love to hear his analysis on, how do you handle, what do parents look for? How do you...
Well, okay, and watch this. This is where I go the other way, and I turn into the jerk. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah, we know.
Because we've gotten...
I'm just getting to know.
We've gotten in society to where we just want to accept everyone.
Oh, yes.
And we're afraid of offending people.
Oh, yes.
And we're afraid of saying the wrong thing and being billed a racist or anti-LGBTQIA plus or whatever. And I think we're slowly getting back to where you can tell the truth. And I'm playing with fire here.
Keep going.
A very small example of what I'm talking about. And it's controversial. And it is, I have to preface it. You can see the pictures of me. I was fat.
Right? I don't think
No, I was very fat. And I don't have a problem saying the word fat. Mm-hmm. As a former fat person. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a problem with people being fat. Mm-hmm. At all.
Right.
Here's the problem I have. Is us pretending, it's okay. Because the truth of the matter is, as a former fat person, and when I say fat, I'm not talking about overweight. I was obese. Okay? I'm not talking about...
How many pounds so people
I got
can
up
relate?
to 325.
Okay.
Well into the 300s.
Bad health at that weight, yes.
Rather than pretending, it's okay, you just be you, how about just telling the truth and saying, look, you're fat, and by the way, your life will get a lot easier if you lost some weight. Because that's the truth. And rather than just being, we're going to accept you, you can still accept people, but say, okay, but you got things to work on. There's nothing wrong with that, as far as I'm concerned. And I think we've gotten to the point in society where we're scared to just tell the truth.
Well, right. And how do you tell the truth when you see your kids out there enjoying skinning whatever and laughing and playing about it and torturing the animal? What do you do with it? Where do you go? How do you get help?
Those are all questions for Jordan Peterson.
And take this scenario. It's a kind of made up scenario. Let's say we have a family, and let's say that one of the kids, married with kids, had a child, let's say, that got charged with molesting younger kid, but they got off. They've been proven innocent. And then you hear that they molested another person in the family. And then you have young babies coming into the family and little children. Do you warn that other family that, because because it was a close of your family that was molested by this person, do you tell that other family, hey, you better just watch your kids when he's around? Or do you not?
I think there's a subtle way to do it for sure. I mean,
do you stay out of their business? Oh, but what's the subtle way?
Yeah, it's slippery. Unless you have, absolute proof, or you just never go to that event, unfortunately, with the family member that is acting weird.
Oh, but this is, let's say the odd one out is with the children, and you're elsewhere.
I see.
And you're the one holding the information. Do you tell these parents of the children, or do you not?
It's a tough one because
you said we're supposed to speak out.
I am sort of in a situation like that.
There's lots of those I know of.
Right. Everybody knows that you've got family members who are misbehaving, and there's children around.
Is it our duty as watchers of those children, because they're children? They can't protect themselves.
Yeah, it's tough. In this situation that I'm currently in, I'm hoping that, something happens at the school level when kids go to school, and, again, schools are schools now.
That it'd be
that
noticed.
that a teacher is going to, see something. It's a tall order for everybody else to be the morality police. It really can be very daunting, right? We just be morality police for everything.
Didn't we start this with everyone should speak up when they know of someone?
Yes. Pedophiles, yeah. If there was a situation where you remember my friend Heather? You
Yes.
met her a couple weeks ago. She has, I'll have to talk to her, but she had a very similar situation, where a family member was clearly misbehaving sexually with, the step kid, and she was marrying into that family. So, it was tough, and I don't recall, and she's a social worker. She learned a lot from that situation, so she'd be a good person to talk to if we ever see her in Texas again. But, she had to deal with it by isolating her own children completely from, same scenario. There was a weirdo who married in, and they had, he became the stepdad to a 13-year-old, and he was doing, some odd things. So the only way that Heather could do anything about it was to isolate her own children. She was very, very frank with the woman, the mother of the child. She said, "I know what's going on, and if you don't get rid of him, then we're never coming over again." So that's how she handled it. She really and she had the support of her husband as well. So, and they
spoke.
She did speak, because she said there's something strange going on with this guy, and if you won't do anything, Heather said, I can't. But what I can do is we're just never coming over for Sunday dinners anymore.
Well, you just use the word support also. And I think support is big all the way around. And now Kathy knows this, and if you listen to the podcast, I don't have any kids, but I love giving parental advice.
Yep.
But I got to think that part of this equation would be to make sure your kids are comfortable enough. And now you can't do this in all cases, but to know that they have got your support and you've got their back. And if weird things are going on,
I totally agree with that, but that's fairyland. Almost.
Well, it is. I know what I'm saying is fairyland to the extreme, but I think that, especially at a certain age, and once again, I don't have kids, so you can just strike me down. I know that in cases that is big time fairyland, but if the parents and the child if the child has the trust and can trust what I say isn't going to be ignored, or I'm not going to get punished, or that, hey, I'm just a kid. I think that might help a little bit too.
I think that's why we have so much of that. Why there's so much demand, because we have way too many people at lower frequencies. Because what you're describing, I called it fairyland, but it is in the higher frequency parents that can do that. Most of our parents these days are so busy with work. Both of them's working. The kids get ignored. Something happens to the kid. The parent notices that he's withdrawn and he's not talking as much, and he stays in his room all the time. Oh, that's just him. It's just his teenage years, and that's just him. When in fact, the kid's probably been molested and can't talk about it.
And I know we're talking about two completely different types of topics, but I think that if a kid is Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys, always talks about his father and explains, and this is, once again, it's a different situation, but his father never really gave him anything, except Jerry knew that if anything went wrong, his dad would be there. Mm-hmm. So that allowed, and what Jerry Jones says is that allowed me to have the ability to take some very huge risks, because I knew that I had the support that if I took a huge risk and I failed, my dad was there for me.
And see, most kids don't get that.
And that's and I don't know if that's a false equivalent.
No, I don't think so.
I think that emotionally, if the kids know my parents are there and feel comfortable, and I do think it takes, as you put it, a higher frequency type parent to walk through it and know, okay, whatever my kid does, and I think you almost have to do it before anything happens.
Oh, yes.
Is I'm going to have their back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just rambling now, but like a marriage, to me, I always told my wife, once again, I'm divorced, so I'm going to give you marital advice. But I always told my wife, I will have your back in public. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only one that says this, obviously. But you could be completely wrong in public. I'm going to have your back. And then when we're in private, I'm going to say, what the hell were you doing? You know, you're wrong, but I think you have to have that
system.
security.
Yes. The security of someone is connected to you and supports you.
Yeah.
No matter what action you choose to take, actions do not change who you are. Your actions you can look at actions that kids or people take. That is separate from the soul of who they are.
Yes.
I have a question for you, Kathy.
Yes.
Why do you even talk to that dude? That's what her question is.
That's question number 2. Question number 1. Have you ever, because I would presume that most pedophiles are antisocial people. I mean, they have to be antisocial because they're just, they're so criminally torn.
Do they show them that way on the YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, have you ever been approached for therapy from somebody who is confessing to sins of any sexual behavior towards children? Have you ever had anybody who's...
Yes. And it was not that person, but that person was witness and allowing, and I turned her in.
Wow.
I had to.
Well, yeah.
How could I live with myself if I didn't? And I informed them to do it. And I told her by the end of today, because they had her on so much medication, she was just kind of a even zone level, and I didn't know if she would do it or not. And I went ahead and reported it because I wasn't going to wait on her to do it.
Wow.
But she had called right before me and done it.
How do you think someone who is that deviant, do you think they could come out of that hell? I mean, there's the low frequency. They're such at a low frequency that they're harming, innocent people, kids. Mm-hmm. Can they be redeemed?
From what I've seen, my answer today is probably not.
So,
letting them back out,
right? Then the whole letting them out after they've spent 4.5 years, in prison.
I'm not saying they couldn't change, but I'm saying the probability of change. What have you seen on your interaction with everything? Do you think they could change?
I hate to say no.
I know, I do too, but I don't think so.
But some, they're just so far. Yeah.
And that makes me sad to think that this is that big and that we have that many people on this planet that is at that level.
Yes, at a very low sickness frequency level that, hence the $1 billion. So it's not only that we've got a lot of sick people here in America, but we've got, almost every other second to third world country is participating in making money off of that illness here in the United States. Because in other countries, if you're a pedophile, they kill you. I mean, in a lot of cultures, I shouldn't say in a lot of because, the family members do it. That's what I'm not. So yes. So there's a demand in these third world countries. There is child trafficking that happens, but that's a small group of people who are controlling getting kids. But most families in third world countries, if they find out that you're doing weird stuff, I mean, you're either, they isolate you from the family. Do you think that deters it? Yes. Yeah. I think so. Absolutely. In the Middle East, I can't think of Dubai in particular, stealing, they'll cut your hand off. So if you go through the markets of Dubai, they have gold laying all over the place. Nobody touches it because getting your hand cut off is such a horrifying punishment that theft is so very low in Dubai.
Watch what I do here.
Okay.
What I believe today is that we are all born sinners. We're all born with certain things and certain temptations that we would like to act upon. And a lot of times the only difference between a good person and an evil person is that the good person doesn't act upon their evil thoughts. And the evil person doesn't know how to control it. Or chooses not to control it and just acts upon their thoughts.
Absolutely. I run into that with clients all the time. We'll be talking about it, and I will say it's always a choice, and they will look at me with the eyes of the lower frequency and say, oh, but that temptation is so good, and it feels so good to go there. They love revenge. They love doing the wrong thing. And that is, I mark it up as a younger soul that is moving from the dark side to the light side. And this is a lifetime where they're having lots of challenges doing that. Because to me, it's a no-brainer. I couldn't choose that.
Yeah.
And I think the higher your frequency goes, the lower the temptation is. But there's so many people that want revenge, so many people that want to get back at those people that did you harm.
Okay. You say the higher your frequency, the lower the temptation. I may break this into two parts. This may be our two episodes.
Okay.
Is it the higher the frequency, the lower the temptation? Or is it the higher the frequency, the more ability you have to think things out and to realize the ramifications of what you naturally would want to do, but you can kind of think 2 steps ahead and realize, okay, for example, I sold my gun. And the reason I sold my gun is because I came to the realization a lot because of Kyle Rittenhouse that if I were ever to use my gun, even if I was completely justified, I'm still going to have to deal with the BS of going to court and defending my actions. And you know what? I don't want to do that. So what's the point of me having a gun? Because I'm not going to use it, because when I'm in that situation, I'd be thinking, man, I should just kill this person. But
then you'll have to shoot the police and the judges.
Exactly.
It just gets out of hand.
Well,
that's awesome.
I was in small country, and I quit carrying a gun because I knew I could kill a certain person, and I thought, is that really the way I want to end this life? And so I decided to get rid of the gun.
See, now, okay, but once I don't mind killing someone, and once again, this is like we're talking about on acting on your thoughts or being able to withhold. But just because I don't mind like, did you see the latest, the dude that shot the through his door at the apartment complex? Okay, so this is going viral on the internet. I think it happened here in Dallas. Guy lives in an apartment. He's got a Ring doorbell and a camera.
Oh, okay.
Basically. Mm-hmm. And some people knock on the door, and they're pretending they're maintenance at the apartment complex, and they're going to change air filters. And they're really just knocking to see if people are home. That's my opinion. But they end up trying to break in. Mm-hmm. And he can see on his phone that the one guy has a gun. And so he sees that, and he goes and gets his gun and just blindly
shoots through the door?
Through the door. Boom, 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 boom. And the bullets go through the door. They go across the breezeway into the apartment.
On the
his
other
neighbor's
side?
apartment. No one was home. Somehow, some way, the two guys that were trying to break in didn't get hit. And they're interviewing this dude after everything's calmed down. And part of me thought, you're a joker. But then the other part of me thought that was pretty cool because they asked him, they showed him the video and everything again. Well, what are you thinking when you see this? And he says, I wish I would have gotten them. And I'm thinking, okay, I either think you're really, really cool or just keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
Can't believe they got away. But knowing not to act on your impulses, I think it's a sign of all sorts of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And we all have impulses.
Yes.
And being able to think through and not act on them. And once again, the customer for the child trafficker or the people I'm watching on YouTube that the predators that get caught, think through what happens.
Well, I think I have the answer to what you're thinking about because you're at a level where you can think through things. Lower vibrational frequencies, the people do not have the ability, if you will, to think through things because it's more reaction from the stored emotion that gets triggered, mm-hmm. and it's an immediate play out without there's no time for thinking of options. It is an immediate reaction of their stored emotion, and that's why I feel this stuff should be taught in school.
Okay, that's why. Can you teach someone
to
think through things?
Well, you can most definitely take, the younger the child you can get, the more influence you can have because they haven't set all their unconscious beliefs yet. Their brain hasn't formed all of that. They say, Dr. Limpton says 0 to 7 years old is the formative years. If you can get in those formative years and honestly teach true unconditional love, and you can teach them how to handle emotions, you can teach them how to go to their anger spot and beat the hell out of the pillow with their emotions, and that's healthy. But to go and hit another kid because they're angry is not okay. That is projecting their emotions onto someone.
And just because it would feel better.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't mean, like you were saying, I know you're joking around. It was awesome. But you shoot the dude, and then you have to shoot the cop, and then you have to, man, I'm going to have to kill like 5 people to.
Right. Just because some guy was trying to break in and kill you.
Yeah. But, I take it to the other level, though, too, where for a long time I didn't have a gun because thinking it through, I knew that the world was not ready for my type of justice. Mm-hmm. And that
we know
if I saw someone trying to steal my wheel covers, I'm going to blow them away. And then I'm really not, I think I'm justified, but the rest of the world's like, what the hell are you doing? And the ability to be able to think 2 steps ahead can really keep you out of a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. But it's not an easy ability to master.
Not when stored emotion is triggered. It's not. Because the stored emotion has an energy of its own, and it will, the more stored emotion you have, the less control you have over it. Because when it gets triggered, it will cause you to do things that you regret.
Okay, well, we're sticking with guns here, but this isn't about guns. It's about emotion. There was a biker bar shooting in California earlier this week as we record this. And it was like a ex-husband, ex-wife type deal. And the ex-husband drove from Ohio to California.
He had a long time to think that through.
Yes, exactly. And so when I hear the story, some people hear that story and they automatically go to guns are a problem, or they automatically go biker bars are a problem, or whatever. When I hear the story, I'm thinking, that dude had a drive from Ohio to California. He had plenty of time to realize this isn't a good idea. And
it's a lot of restroom breaks too, you know.
It either never crossed his mind that this isn't a good idea, or he talked himself out of.
Every time he went there, he talked himself out of it.
That's a bad idea, but I'm still going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was so mad. That could have been a very good case of his stored emotion.
That's where I'm going, yes.
Yeah, was so strong that he didn't think ahead, that he couldn't. He was just in a rage. And a rage is usually a person that has tremendous stored emotion.
Yeah. And so it's like two extremes. The dude who's getting broken into and just blindly shoots a door, he doesn't really have time to think. This dude from Ohio had all sorts of time.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I had a question, but I got distracted by that. There's this theory that I hear a lot, generally from angry men.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Who brought her in?
I didn't.
But you're going to like my question because it sounds bad. But I've heard this mostly from angry men who say that they've been told the reason that they're angry is because they're letting their emotions out all the time to have less angry emotions. Mm-hmm. The problem is they're angry all the time because they're letting those angry emotions out, but manipulating myself, I'll use me, in saying that is what they're supposed to do. Because you keep it bottled up inside,
right?
It'll be explosive, except I think I'm being manipulated.
Oh, yes, you are.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, so somebody who blows up every single day to say
is projecting their emotion onto someone else. You can with her
with what you're saying is projecting
emotion onto someone else, and that is, oh my God, that's an addictive behavior, and it is so low frequency. If you were going to outlaw stuff, you would outlaw that. Because that is the lowest frequency you can go to, where you have all this stored anger that you won't heal. But man, you get that high when you get to blow up on somebody.
Well, okay, and you're talking about projecting. Mm-hmm. I think we're saying the same thing. There are plenty of situations where, and I'm almost 100% of the time now, with me, if you treat me bad, that's on you. That's a problem you have with yourself. I didn't do anything to deserve it. Mm-hmm. I don't get treated poorly really that often.
Right.
Or maybe I just don't accept it. And if I do get treated poorly, I just move on. So it's not a big deal to me. But
Enterprise won't let you move on.
I know, that's true. But I just won't rent a car. But
I got a thumb.
But yeah, so the worse you treat me, to me, that's more of a... Dude, I feel kind of bad. And this really makes... Okay, you talk about angry men. It makes women really mad when a woman wants to argue. And I just want to argue. I'm like, okay.
Well, see, that's the high frequency. The woman is at the low frequency because she's wanting to project her anger, her emotion onto you because she doesn't know how to handle it in a healthy way. She's at a very low frequency, and I've said this before in our podcast, the stored emotion has to be fed, and its food is drama. So she was searching for drama, and you wouldn't play the game.
Yeah.
So she's going to be even more aggravated and more triggered, and more of her emotions going to go wild till some would go to the point of actually becoming physical to try to engage you for the drama. And that's what's so low frequency, and that we need to be teaching children and others. Everybody on the planet needs taught.
Oh, without a doubt.
You know what I've learned over the last, few years, in studying a lot of Jordan Peterson and Tolle and our friend
Deepak?
Well, him as well, but our other guy,
Kanye West.
Kanye West. I've learned a lot from him. New curse words. That, and including you as well. So it's a lot of listening to a lot of people who try and get those cycles out of your head. What I did learn though was at every point in your day, you get to control the outcome.
Oh yeah. So
people who can't control their emotions and have explosive, throwing things around the house, or I would say to that person, who's in control of you? If you're not in control, that means somebody else is, occupying that elevator.
But you have to be intentional about that sometimes. Very intentional. And once again, my focus group of one, I do a very good job actually of going with the philosophy that I'm not going to let anyone else control my emotions. No one's going to give me a bad day. It's all me. And this happened a week and a half ago. Someone made me really mad at a meeting. And I left the meeting. I got in the truck and I drove here. And I was just like, if you're going to treat me that way, screw you, I'm out. And I left in the middle of the meeting, came here, and I was livid. I've parked my truck. I put it in park. I didn't get out. I didn't shut the engine off. And it occurred to me that you just let them win. And I immediately put the car back in reverse and went back to the meeting. Because F you. I'm not going to let you control my reaction or a negative reaction. Mm-hmm. And what I just did was I let another individual control my mood. And that's just not going to happen.
Right.
And as much as I live by that philosophy, there are times, and it's one of the few times where I've caught myself. And I was very glad that I caught myself. But I was also kind of ashamed of myself at the same time because I allowed it to get to that point. And it didn't usually it wouldn't have gotten to the point where I left. I would have I would have laughed at the person.
Right.
And I would tell you the exact details.
I know.
And I will tell you once we stop recording, because the person I'm referring to, you know who you are because you're listening, right?
You held your personal power, even if it took you the drive.
I gave it up for about 5 minutes.
Right.
And I don't like that.
Right.
It bothers me right now
that you gave it up.
Even though ultimately I made the right decision, it bothers me that for 5 minutes I was not in control.
Right. Right. But
boom,
you gathered it back very quickly. And that's what we do.
When I was doing addiction counseling many years ago, and I learned this from the addicts themselves. That's most of my training was actually from the addicts because I was just a house mom in transitional living. I was doing it as a weekend gig to make money for my daughter's bat mitzvah. So, that's what I did. And so I learned from the addicts. One thing I learned when they would get into, their low frequency space, they had colors. So I learned to think of colors. So that was something that they, in addiction, I guess in addiction recovery, they bring you through, because I've never been through addiction recovery, believe it or not. The counselors talk about when you get into that emotional state, you've got to think of that color. What's your color? And they would say, just whatever your favorite color is, just absorb yourself in that color. And it can be very soothing. So
it was your happy color that you would think of.
Yes, anything that would whatever your favorite color, some people it was
Color
opaque.
heals. Color heals.
Yeah.
Words hold vibrational frequency. They heal. Sound heals. Smells heal. People were getting more and more there, but everything has a vibrational frequency. And as I've said many times, everything is vibration before it's solid. And our outer aura, our energy field, if you correct it out here, it corrects the body. And that's what they were doing then. They were using the color that would soothe the person, which helped soothe the physical part of them.
I've in the past been I've had moments of addiction in the far, far past with opiates. Mm-hmm. And I learned what that feeling is like when you know those opiates hit your system and you just feel that feeling that, you know, you're always chasing it though. It's the, you know, you're constantly chasing that first feeling. But that feeling that I memorized, I use that as my color.
Oh, cool.
So whatever, it's like a fuchsia, just if anybody wanted to know. But I've memorized the opiate hitting your system feeling. So I know it's a whole other warming feeling. And to me, it's like a fuchsia, a little bit of orange.
There you go.
That
Maybe a
is
tip for someone.
Good place to close.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.